this is going to be. So if your ball bounce doesn't turn out right the first time, delete it, make a new ball bounce. That one didn't turn out right, delete it, make a new one. If you do a ball bounce 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it gets easier and easier and easier every time, and it looks better and better and better. So just to show real quickly how I did the ball bounce. Okay, set it here. I'm going to freeze my transforms. I'm going to make sure that my timeline stuff is showing. Why do they move stuff on me? Display, or window, UI elements. There it is, time slider. Elements, time slider, there we go. Okay. So the ball rolling, bless you. The ball rolling I do after. The first thing I do is my bounces. So I set keyframes on my Translate Y. Remember too that we can go under the animation menu, under that keyframe. Bless you. It's contagious. I set this to all keyable from channel box, and then when I hit set key, it'll automatically set a key right there on that value. Then I'm going to jump up to, let's say 20 frames, and I'm going to set a key on this. Now we know from last time when we did this kind of as together, we have the ball bounce up, and then when it hits the ground, we want it to basically stay on the ground for 2 frames, and then go up and then stay on the ground for 2 frames, then go up and stay on the ground for 2 frames. So it doesn't hurt just to add those 2 frames right now, so don't have to worry about that later. Then I'm going to go up a little bit further. Now we also know that between the first jump and the second jump, there should be less time, okay? So instead of me going to 40, I'm going to go to 35. Set a key and set a key. Then I'm going to go up to, let's say, this is about 15 frames. So I'm going to go up to, let's say, 45. Set a key, set a key. Then I'll go up about 10 frames. Set a key, set a key. Then I'll go up about 5 frames. Then I'll go up to there. Then I'll go up to there. Okay. Probably don't need 2 frames here, so I can delete that. Probably don't need 2 frames here, so I can delete that. Okay. It's just these first couple that we need the extra frame just to hold it. The other ones I can do without. All right. So I set all my bottom ones. So now I'm going to go back and set the middle ones. So I'm going to go to the middle of this, raise it up, say 7 or 8, and then set a key. Click here. This is going to go obviously less high, so let's say 5. We'll set a key. Go between these. 2.5, go between these. 1, go between these. 0.45. So you can see how easy this is once you've gone through the process, that you know what to expect. You know the changes you're going to get into. Okay? Now just those first keyframes that I set, way too fast. Go to playback speed, real time maximum. Okay, not bad. So now I can go into my graph editor, grab all these bottom keyframes and make them all linear. And remember, that's going to make sure that each one of these bounces hits the ground and then shoots right back up. Now while I'm in here, I'm going to look at these curves. Every bounce should basically be a representation of that initial bounce, okay? At least the bigger hills. So here, this hill here should be about the same as this, but smaller, and about the same as this, but smaller. This one looks kind of weird. It looks like it's really stretched out. So I'm just going to shuffle this over here. So that looks nice. And then that looks nice too. Okay. So now everything looks nice and even the way I want it to. I'm going to rewind, hit play. Okay, looks like it was a little bit slow. Okay, so now I need to come in here and edit this. So I'm going to go to my tangents, or my key curves, weighted tangents, take these to free tangent weight, and then I can grab each of these. So I'm going to grab that one, oops, that one, and then I hold shift and middle drag, and that gives me more of that shape. All right, deselect. Come on. Deselect that one. A little bit less. Deselect that one. A little bit less. Okay. So now let's see what that looks like. There we go. So that looks pretty decent. Okay, cool. Yes, sir.
I noticed when you were when we first were doing the ball bouncing, and then after we just did the bouncing straight up, we moved the actual like ball and then set the key break. I mean, do you prefer that way, or are we able to, like, say if we wanted to just animate it from start to finish, it going and bumping in that arc?
You can do it start to finish. You can say, I want to start here, I'm going to roll, squish down, come up, and do that. Eventually, you would get into being able to do that. As long as you're cool with trying it out, go ahead and try it out. Okay? Typically, that's how you would work. That's how you would work in a real-life animation situation. This way, it just helps us break it down. That's the only reason we're doing it like this. Okay? Because especially if we're trying to focus on just what the bounces look like, it can be tricky to see what are the bounces doing because I'm also watching it move, right? So it's all based on your own workflow. At the end of the day, I am going to see your animation, so I'm not going to know how you did it. Okay? So now that I have this, then I can go and animate my position. So I'm going to hold shift, I'm going to grab all this stuff, I'm going to add more frames, I'm going to scoot it down to 60, there we go, and then I can just start my animation. So I'm going to say translate X, go up here, set a key there. So now I can just check it out and see. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So that looks all right. I can probably go a little bit further with it. So I'm going to go to 200 and really crank it out. Now you want to find a good number here because if you, come on. Are you setting that key? Yes. Okay. If you go too far and your ball is bouncing, your camera is basically going to have to fly to keep up with it. Okay. So you always got to find a good balance of how far your animation is going to go. Okay. Also, while we're doing this, we got to make sure this doesn't happen. See how it's sliding between these two? So that'll be corrected when we do our other stuff. So that's sufficient there. My graph for this is actually pretty good because it starts off slow, picks up speed, and then it slows down again. I don't want it to go that far though. I'm going to basically go to, let's say, 45. That's good. And then I can do my rotation. So I'll go to my rotate Z, yes. Set a key, I'll go all the way up here, spin it around a few times, set another key. Okay. Now the speed that it's rotating here, it's almost there, but it is sliding a little bit. So I'm going to go to my rotate Z here, grab this, pull it down. Now I did have to go negative. Remember, if I went positive before, it may look like it's rotating backwards, which is obviously not the idea. There we go. That feels better there, and that should feel better all over. Okay, so now the rotate's pretty much done. So then when I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rotate the ball, it comes in perfect. Now right before we go to flip to that first hill, I have to make sure that the ball is rotated all the way around like this. Okay? In order for it to squish correctly, it has to be vertical like that. So I'm going to set a rotate key. I'm going to go back one frame. I'm going to set a scale key. I'm going to go up to that 60, and then I'm going to squash it. Remember that I don't just go like this, because that's not how this is happening. It's this and this. Okay? The Y has to scale down, the X and Z have to scale out in order for this thing to work correctly. And then I can move it down so that it's hitting the ground. Okay, so I'm going to set keys on the Y, the X, and the Z of the scale. Okay, so now we come in here. Now here, he's actually under the ground. I'm going to move him back up. Just reset that to 0. There we go. Okay. So now he comes down, squashes, and then right here he should be scaled back up. So he's going to go like this. He's going to squish in like that. These numbers here, the scale Y, is always going to be opposite of the X and the Z. So if this is above 1, these two are going to be below 1. Okay? So we'll always keep those, an eye on those, and that's just a good indicator as to what each one is doing. There we go. So like that, I'm going to set keyframes on these. I may also want to do some some rotate in here too, but I won't know until I get to the next stage. So it comes in here, squishes, it goes up. And actually, the rotate for that looks pretty good. It looks like it's aimed right where it's supposed to be. Yep, that was good. Okay, we get to the top of the hill, and he goes back to being 1. And he also levels off his rotation. Okay, so he comes in, squishes, jumps up, rounds out, and then right before he hits the ground here, he should be facing the direction he's supposed to be going. So we'll set a key there. And he's supposed to be stretched out. So we squish this in, we pull this out. I also make sure in my front view that he hasn't hit the ground yet. One of the things that could happen is as we're scaling this, he goes below the ground. So he's not, so he's cool. Grab this, we set keys. Okay, so now he comes down. Now here's a weird thing that's happening, not weird, but as he comes down, he's stretching out, but he's like stretching in a weird way. He's basically coming down like this, okay, like that, but he's stretching out this way, okay, and it looks kind of weird. He's stretching this way, but going that way. So what I want to do is I'm going to set just a little rotational keyframe up here, just to kind of help him on his way. So it comes up. So that's going to feel a little bit more natural. Now he hits the ground. Now I'm going to stretch this out, squish this down. Again, look at it from the front view. This should be maybe 1.1, 1.25, that's good, 0.8, good.
And the X and Z scale should stay the same.
Oh, yeah, X and Z are always going to be the same value. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to set keyframes on these, on this, set a key. I'm going to go up to the next frame. This is where he's going to be totally squashed. So we'll rotate him perfectly level. We will squash him out, squash him down. It may help too if I did a split view here. Let me go to layouts, 2 side by side, and I'm going to pick my front view over here. That way I can reference it and see if he's actually on the ground. There we go. Okay, so set a key for that. So here he comes. All right, and then when we go to this frame, he's going to be stretched out again. So this is going to come in, this is going to go out. Make sure he's not touching the ground or below the ground. Set a key. Okay, he gets back to the top. He rounds out again.
So most of this is just playing it as you go.
Right. Just looking at it and making sure that you're setting these things in the right spot. The biggest pitfall that people fall into is they go to where they want it to be squashed and they set a key where it's supposed to be squashed. And then they forget that it's supposed to stretch out right afterwards. So it ends up with this like warbly mess that's just kind of like moving around. Okay? So you have to watch it between each one of these and make sure that you're getting the right motion. Make sure that as it comes down like this, it's aimed correctly. Oops, 1 frame back. It's aimed correctly and it's stretched out correctly. All right, and then we go to that frame, and here you can see he's sticking below the ground, but that's cool because we're going to squash him anyway. And make sure, again, these are above 1, that's below 1. If we do it the opposite direction, or if we don't make sure that it's below 1, then it'll look weird. Okay, our ball will gradually be getting bigger somehow, like it's inflating. We go up to the next frame, It's floating. Nope, you stay on the ground. There it comes, it hits. Hey, you're not on the ground, get on the ground. Oh, I gotta set the keyframe for the Y and then it'll be on the ground. There we go. And then going up and setting those keyframes. That gets out, this gets in. Alright, then we get to the top of this hill. These are all going to be 1s. And then for all the other bounces here, he's pretty much not going to stretch out. Okay, because those are just little ones. Alright. Now I want to come into my scales here and make sure that my scales are representing what I'm trying to show. So in this case, pointer. So in this case, this scale here, this is as high as it's going in one direction. It should never go in that height again for any of my other scales. So it should be just like our translate Y. It gradually gets lower. So here and here are my extremes. This graph should go inward. You can see the one line right here in the center. That's what they should be heading into. So basically it just like slopes in towards that center point. So I'm going to have to adjust stuff later, which is fine. I just need to make sure that everything is cool now. So I'm going to go and make sure this is maybe a little bit higher here. This is a little bit higher. That's good. It comes back to 1. This is lower. This is lower. These two need to come down below this. This needs to come below that. This needs to go down further. Okay, so I'm looking at this center 1 line, and I'm making sure that whatever 1 does, the other side is doing basically the opposite. So here, see how narrow that is and how wide this is? I don't want that. I want these to be pretty even. I want this to be pretty even and smaller. Okay, this can probably come up a little bit more. Oops. This can probably go down a little bit. Let's go down a little bit. Okay, now because I'm adjusting these sizes, I'm going to have to go back into my animation and change my Y. Because as I'm stretching and squishing this, it's raising it off the ground or whatever, pushing it below the ground. Alright, that looks pretty good. It comes here, down, 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 down. Okay, so now let's go look at the Y. Here's all the Y stuff. Now it's easier just to do it in here, and I can actually switch this to my right view, and it actually is a bit easier to see. Okay, so we're rolling. There it is, and we're going to squish. Goes up. Cool. Don't care about it. Don't care about it. Right here we're good. Right here we're good. Oh, that goes up. Perfect. All right, right here we're a little bit below the ground, right there. So I'm just going to scoot him up a little bit. Set a keyframe there. Go up to my next frame. Scoot him up a little bit. Okay, there he's good. There he's good. Not bad. All right, so now let's rewind it and play. Okay, that's simple. Okay, that's as simple as this animation needs to be. And you can see I did that with explaining things in less than 18 minutes. Okay? So it's not a big deal. It's just a matter of focusing on each area and making sure that each area looks appropriate. And then obviously making sure that as he's rolling, his speed and his rotation match. If he's moving super fast but only rotating a little bit, that doesn't make sense. If he's rotating like crazy and only moving a little bit, that doesn't make sense. We have to correct it. Now I'd like to say that there's some magic way to understand the graph editor better than me just explaining it 100 times. There's not. The only way is for you to go in here and start to play with it and make those connections of when I move this in here, it does that out there, and when I move these handles, this happens. Okay? So eventually you'll get accustomed to this more. There's no way around it. We have to play with that thing all over the place. Okay, so we'll get used to the graph editor more. All right, so now for my rendering stuff, again, we keep it simple. my advice to anyone, keep it simple. You have, this is going to be our, the last day I'm going to go over anything with the ball. Next class, we're going to start the next assignment, which is going to be the mech animation. So that way, while this one's rendering, you can work on that one. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. My advice is to keep it as simple as possible, okay? I could make 75 obstacles in here and have the ball going all over the place, but if I don't have time for that, or if I don't understand the essentials of it, there's no point, okay? Keep it simple, make sure you understand the foundations, and then add on top of that. So the foundation is I have a ground plane. I'll also take this and I'll extrude it and pull it up. So now I have a backdrop. I'll hit 3. I'll add a bevel here instead of hitting 3. More segments. There we go. That's good. Okay, so that's nice and round. All right, so now I got a environment. I'm going to add a material to this. We're rendering through Mental Ray. My recommendation is to render it through Mental Ray. That'll be the least. You could also try V-Ray if you've played with V-Ray before, or RenderMan, or if you want to try Arnold on your home computers, you can try that. Mental Ray, where are you at? There you are. Okay, so I'm going to go with a Mila with Mental Ray. And this is ball material. I'm going to click on the little color map. I'm going to go to a ramp. There he is. Set this to none. And again, I like to be precise. So if I put this one to 0.55, and then I make a new one here, I set this one to 0.45, and I take a black one and put it in the middle and set this to 0.5, I'll get a really nice thing in here. Okay, maybe not. What did I do? This one, there we go. Yeah, well, that's what I meant to do. So this should be closer to that. Closer to that. There we go. So I'm looking at that center line there. That's what I'm kind of gauging this on. Cool.
Yeah, a bump so that inside's like a core.
Right. And I could do that too, right? Because this is a polygon. Once we have this, then I could actually grab that and I could extrude it and do that. And all my animation still goes with it. I could make a Pokeball. Where'd he go? All of a sudden he's going real slow. There we go.
Change my geometry.
Boom, boom, boom. All right. And then just add a little bit of fanciness to it. I'm going to go under here and say I want this to be plastic. You know, don't do something fancy just because you think it's going to make it look better. It's kind of like if you saw someone draw a paint a picture and they used a number 2 brush, if that's a thing, and you went out and you bought a number 2 brush thinking you're going to be able to do that, it doesn't happen, okay? Just do stuff that makes this animation look better. Like some people will say, oh, I want it to be paint, so I'm going to go with paint, and then it's just automatically going to work. Or I want it to be glass, because how cool would it be to see a glass ball? It's hard to see a glass one. The paint one's going to look like crap by default. So just do simple stuff. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on the bump. I go to Utilities. I say Bump 2D. I go to the mapper. I go to File. I go to Folder. I go to, I don't have anything. And Dylan doesn't have anything either. What's wrong with him? I should have set my project. I'm living the dangerous life. I even saved my project. Leave that one.
There's a video you can watch.
On how to set a project. Should watch that. Concrete.
You made those.
There we go. Here's one of the sucky things about Maya 2017. You can't do this. I can't just paste right into this window. I don't know what they did that for. All right, so now I have this like concrete texture on here that looks like butt. So let me go back, put that down to something lower, like 0.1, and maybe go to my place 2D texture. I'm going to mirror it and add more repeats, 3 and 3. There we go. That looks better. All right, so it has some sort of detail to it apart from just being the ball. On my ground, I'm going to add a material. same Mila material. Something light. There you go. And there's nothing fancy. It's just that. And then for my lighting, I'm going to add a area light. If you had me in modeling class, we take the quadratic to decay, or decay to quadratic. We crank this up to an astronomical number. We go to mental ray. We use the light shape. We set that to 1. Every light, every area light, high intensity, quadratic, use light shape, rectangle. And then rotate that.
It's the fact that I'm turning it up that high, I just feel like I'm doing something that
We shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, just full blast.
And then we wait. And somewhere it's rendering. It's rendering through RenderMan. I don't know how that got set to default. Discard.
Dylan's class.
Probably Dylan's class. Oops.
No, we haven't rendered anything.
You have what?
We haven't rendered anything.
Okay. Well, it might be just his preferences. See, I did something wrong, so that's 5,000. That's way too high. 2,000.
Should try just 5.
5? That's ridiculous.
You might have to try 5.
I might have to try 5. There we go. 50 is too
Maybe
light.
mine's too big.
150. There we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. 350. There we go. That's looking good. Okay. Now keep in mind I'm not going to be this far out, so I'm not going to see this hot spot. So I don't care about that. I am going to make my light a bit bigger. Okay. The bigger my light is, if I switch to this, you can see how hard the shadow is. The softer that shadow is going to be. Okay, so I increased the size of my light, so now I have a nice soft shadow. This looks pretty horrible. Look how blocky that is. So I definitely want to hit 3 on this and smooth that out. And then so that my light kind of goes with my scene, my ball's here and then it comes way down there. I either want to make this huge, like that, or I kind of keep it tinier and I duplicate it.
What if you did, like, follow the ball, so kind of like a spotlight?
Oh no,
No,
well,
can't do that?
you could do that if it looks good. I just don't like to because it's too much stuff. Like if the shadow is moving the exact same rate as the ball, it looks weird. Now if you had it like panning or rotating, that might look cool. Okay?
Keyframe lights.
You can keyframe light, you can keyframe everything. Everything in Maya can be keyframed. Yep. Alright, so there's my ball. You'll see that the lighting does look pretty decent. The ball is obviously the standout object in here. Just to go into what Tyler was saying, could we use a spotlight? And there's definitely ways you can use any of these lights to make it look good. Okay, I don't want to say you can't do something like that, but here's a way that makes this look bad. Let me just turn these off.
Sorry, I suggested it.
Yeah. No, this way, see? That's bad. We can't see the light, we can't see the stripe too much, so that looks bad.
So I
So
mean like spotlight.
no, I know what you meant, yeah. Right, we could take this back here like this, okay? And we could take this up to quadratic, take this up to, what was it, 300, I think? We could soften the light, soften that. We could take our shadow to, I'm going to tell Maya we're using an area light for the spotlight, which makes it behave a little bit more realistic looking.
What does that do then? Does it like, instead of...
You know the size of it, meaning making the shadow do stuff? The bigger the light is, the softer the shadow is.
We have no light apparently now.
We do, it's barely there. It just makes the light size and part of the attributes. So it's actually the light shape is affecting it, where before the light shape wasn't. The light could be scaled up huge or scaled up tiny and we're getting the same amount of light. All right. So here, this is, I mean, it's grainy because our settings are still low, but this is something where we could actually use this as our lighting source, okay? And we could, if it lended it to the scene, I'm going to duplicate this light, I'm going to scoot it over here, scoot this over there, give this a different color. What color was that one? It's like yellow? Yep. Okay. Let me scoot this one down. I think we're getting just too much light blending together. I may need to scale these two.
You keyframe intensity on lights?
You can keyframe everything. Everything. Now, what we do is we would just right-click inside there to keyframe it. Okay. Now here, this might be a cool way to kind of show this off too, right? Let's say we went through the first day hand-on. We had like the going beyond scene, right? So extra stuff we could do to add to the scene. Let's say our first bouncing ball was just a plain bouncing ball. It rolled, it bounced, and it was a happy little ball, right? So in that case, this light might be, clicky, this light might be just a happy blue light, okay? So while the ball is rolling in this area, it's happy. But then it keeps rolling, right? And then all of a sudden the light clicks off, the other one clicks on, and it's red. So now it's like an angry bouncing ball. So now the bounce is different. So instead of me just doing one bouncing ball that's just a happy bouncing ball, now I have an angry bouncing ball or a scared bouncing ball, right? Because I can show different ways to do those kinds of things. And then I could have another animation right after this. Now the cool thing about all that, let's say I wanted to do that because I really wanted to go beyond. I take all of this stuff, I right click and I copy it. And then I go to the end of this one and I paste it. The only one that I have to update is my Translate X. Okay, so it basically goes from, oops, there to there. So here he goes.
Did you just copy and paste the frames?
I copied and pasted the entire animation and offset it. So now he's going to roll, he slows down a little bit, and then he's going to roll again. He's going to bounce again. Boop, boop, boop. But now I can change it, right? So if this is him scared, maybe I animate him kind of shaking and then jumping, and then shaking and then jumping, right? Or something like that. Just as an example of how I did that. It could be, too, that I have different obstacles. So here I have regular obstacles, and then down here I have dangerous obstacles. There's a spear that gets thrown and he jumps out of the way or something, right? So there's lots of different ways that we could present this. There's no one way. The idea is keep it simple at first, you have more time, then go crazy with it. Then you can add stuff to it. Don't try to add a bunch of stuff and then fall short because you just didn't have time, right? Yeah. All right. So once we have this, then we do two things. Let me just get rid of this other one because I don't need the other one right now. Not what I'm doing. Probably too much. It's going to crash, maybe. I don't know. Good. Okay. Let's just hide these. And then I'll bring back my other lighting situation that I had. There we go. Okay. So with this one, you're doing the same thing. We have our render settings set to 960 by 540. Yep. We're going to click the little blue circle. We're going to animate our camera from the side view so we can see it. So I'm just going to click the camera, hit S, go to the end of my animation, and just scoot it down. Okay, so now we have this basic side view so that when I'm looking at your animation, I can see, is the ball doing all the stuff that it should be doing? Okay, then we do a play blast. Let me set this back to 200. I right click, I go to play blast. I don't need my ornaments, I don't need my views, or view, I want that. I want my image, Maya, 1. Where am I going to save this to? I'll save it to Dylan's folder. Sarcona, bouncy ball, play blast. Oops. And I already set that to be the right thing. Okay. So that's going to be a Maya image. So now I hit play blast. I didn't mean to put from window. That was a bad thing. I'm used to doing from window. I want to do from render settings. There we go. Yes. And I also want to turn that off. There we go. One of these days. Okay. Now, if a light jumps in the way or an object jumps in the way and the camera can't see the ball, obviously that doesn't work. That little line in the middle, I don't care about that.
This makes me think of a Pokeball for some reason. Just the white with the black line.
Mm-hmm. Well, get your phones out. You can find them. All right, so this is 960 by 540. Pretty sweet. Those lights are bothering me. I'm going to hide them. So I throw it on a layer. My settings are already there, so I just play blast again. Once you've done it once to a file, it remembers all the stuff you have. So it just overwrites the last time you did it. And you can see how quickly this goes. Now, doing this serves two purposes. One, you're turning it in, obviously, so that I can see it. But two, it forces you to see a real-time playback of what your animation is doing. Okay? There's too many times where we render our stuff out, throw it into a QuickTime movie, and turn it in, and don't even watch the animation we've done. And what happens is it turns out looking horrible, and you've never actually looked at it. Okay? So now we can look at this. I can even go frame by frame and investigate to see what each one's doing. Perfect, perfect. Because this is how I'm going to view it as I go basically frame by frame, and I make sure that your ball is stretching and squashing at the same time it should be squashing and stretching. Okay, so now we have that one. Cool. So now I'll make a new camera. I'll turn my lights back on. And I will reset my camera up. So I'm going to take the focal length, maybe like 20 or 10. Okay, look at that. That's too much. Let's do 90. Let's go the other way. There we go. So I'm going to set a key on this camera. Oops, not that. That. And then I'll go up to 200. And for this, you really want to look at your camera and make sure that it's moving when it should be moving. And it should be moving basically when the ball's moving. So what we don't want to do is the ball starts bouncing or rolling, and then the camera starts moving after it. And then the camera stops, and like 2 seconds later, the ball stops. It looks weird. Okay? So with this, they're kind of in sync. Okay? Now the ball went out of frame here. I definitely don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go to about there. I'm just going to zoom out just a smidge. Oops, you still went out. There we go. Let's try that again. There we go. And that might be kind of neat too, that when it does come to rest, that it comes to rest like right by the ball. That way if we have a neat texture on there, we can really show that off. But still, we look at it again. Oops, it's going out of frame here, so I should probably just scoot it over. All right, so now I can look at this again and see what it looks like. All right, that doesn't look too bad. All right, then I go to my render settings. I set this up, my name, so I'm gonna bounce render. EXRs are cool, name.number.extension. Make sure this is correct, otherwise you have to rename your stuff. Start frame is 1, end frame is 200. My perspective 1 is my render cam. That's the right size. My quality gets cranked up to 2. My motion blur gets set to full because we're deforming it, or yeah, we should just need no deformation. Let's verify it before we get too far here. That looks so fancy. Yeah, no deformation should be fine. Okay, so we leave this to no deformation. Motion blur by 1, that should be good. If we had a slower moving object, we might need to motion blur it a bit more just so that we get some motion blur on it. If it happens too much, we may need to motion blur it less. So motion blur by 0.5. And what that's going to do is motion blur less frames together so that we get more of a solid shape.
you recommend keyframing the entire like animation and then adding the rotation in at the end, or would you like recommend adding the rotation as you keyframe it?
I like to set a start point and end point. So usually when I do my movement, that's when I'll do my rotation too.
Okay.
Okay. Like if I was going to do it the other way, what I wouldn't want to do is I'm going to go from this point to this point and rotate it and move it.
Okay.
And then do a bounce, and then go from this point to that point and do another rotation, because that is just too much movement, okay, where we have to make sure we're staying consistent. I go here and here, that's my movement. Then I do rotation here to here, and then I can fill in with all my bounces.
Okay, so you would do straight movement first, rotation, then the bounces.
Yes.
Okay.
Just because of how that's moving. This is moving in this specific scene. So that looks pretty good the way that was. You can see the before and after. Okay, this is more motion blur, this is less motion blur. Okay, so you want to just be aware that we do have settings, and it's not one of those things where we can just go in there and just set it to 50 and it's good. It's not. Cool. So then we would go to render, we would go to batch render, set this to like 16, hit batch render and close, probably save our file at some point. I haven't done that yet. There we go. All right, now if it's rendering and you're leaving for the day, you grab a sign that says rendering. Don't turn off my computer, please. You put it on your computer. You right click in your taskbar and set your task manager's preferences so that the Maya batch has the below normal priority. Okay, that way when someone else comes on the computer, they don't shut your stuff off, hopefully. It doesn't affect them. And then just to show the last little tidy up part of how to take this, the next step after all of these are rendered out is to bring it into After Effects, make your movie, and then that's it. Okay? Now, as it's rendering, you definitely want to check it out and verify that it's doing the right thing. Start going to BallBounce, images. All right, so here are my BallBounce movies. So I'm going to open this with DJV. And I'm going to verify that I'm liking the way it's looking. So far, it sucks. I have this line cut off here. I have this light that's kind of blown out. That looks horrible. So I know right away I need to cancel the rendering. So I go to render cancel. Yes. I'm going to take my lights here and just pull them back a little bit and pull them up a little bit. Okay, now what that should do, hopefully, is just get them out of the way. So now if I save this, just render a little chunk of this where it was an issue. All right, that looks much better. Okay, now I caught it ahead of time, which means I don't have to wait until 3 hours later when it's done rendering to fix it. So now I can just go through and say render, batch render again, back to my task manager, back to my Maya batch, priority below normal, render sign is on the computer. Once these start popping out again, I'm going to check it again because I want to make sure I have the right camera rendering. My rendering doesn't look like a horrible mess, and everything's cool. Okay. So once it's all done rendering and we're happy with the way it's turned out, then we go into After Effects. We double click. We find our video. There. Here's the one I did earlier. I import it. So I just grab one of these, sequence, import. Okay, so it just imports it there. We just double clicked, click on it, import. No big deal. Then we drag this onto here. There's our animation. Now, you don't have to do the next part, but you may want to. You may say, you know what, it's a little bit dark. I need to brighten it up a little bit. I can go under Effect. I can wait. There we go. I can go to Color Correction. I can go to Exposure. And I can just pull up the exposure. Okay? And you'll see I'm just brightening it just a little bit. That's too much. Brightening it just a little bit. Okay, here's the before and after, like that. Or I could, I'm going to get a little crazy on this one. I'm going to go to like hue and saturation, and I can shift my hue. There we go. I like that color better, let's say. Or that color. Or it's too saturated. I need to desaturate this thing. I can increase the lightness a little bit. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that we can adjust it in the afterwards. What might be kind of cool if I go to hue and saturation, I go to my blues or my cyans, and I overly saturate my cyans and blues. So now that ball really kind of pops a little bit more. Go back to the blues, pull that up a bit too. Okay, maybe even the ground I can go and add, what would that be, yellows or reds? Pull that saturation down. Go in the yellows, pull that saturation down, there we go. So lots of different things we can do to kind of enhance the way this is looking. And of course we want to look at it from different angles and check it out and make sure it's still cool. It's good enough. Alright, so once we're done with this, then we go to export under file and add to render queue. We go to lossless. This is where we pick the output. We want everything to be a QuickTime. So every movie we do, it's a QuickTime. Every format option we do is H.264. I have to take this off screen so I can hit OK, because my screen isn't big enough. Hit OK there. We give it a name. So I'm going to call this, into the right folder, Sarcona underscore BallBounce. And render. Okay. Now this is my rendering of this. I also have to do my play blast. So my play blast for my stick has to be made into a movie. My play blast for the ball has to be in a movie. Okay. So when you're turning these in, you'll be turning in so far 4 movies. You'll have 2 for the stick animation, the play blast and the rendered, and then you'll have the ball bounce play blast and the ball bounce render. Okay. So once it's done, you go through, you check out your finished work. Boing, boing, boing. Wonderful. Okay, so that's it. Now, just to be safe, where's my other rendering? 2540. There, work. Sarcona ball bounce images. All right, so now I have some more frames coming out. So again, I want to double check and make sure my frames are still good. Okay, so it looks like the camera's moving because the line here is shifting. So the camera's moving, so I've actually picked the right camera. The ball is moving, so that's cool. I don't see anything blown out here. Looks pretty decent. So I'm happy with that. There we go. Okay, so that's your assignment. You're going to be turning in your 2 movies for. Oops. I gotta stop closing windows. 2540, finished. You'll be turning in your 4 movies for this when we get to that point. We're not at that point yet. Okay, we're going to do the mech animation starting on Wednesday. The end of next week, these 3 things will be due. Okay, your mech animation isn't going to take terribly long because you already know how to animate stuff by now. You've already animated a stick, you've already animated the bouncing ball, and then the mech one is just going to be making sure that things are animating in the right order and it looks cool. And then adding textures, rendering it out, same kind of stuff. Okie dokie. Any questions? No. Okay.